Good evening, everyone. Tonight's discussion is going to be about opportunity gaps, which is the lack of equal opportunity, to sum it up. We're going to go into the gaps within the housing market, within the education system, and within employment. So, when we speak on opportunity gaps, usually that's defined by stating that there's a lack of resources. Um, Usually, there's a lack of resources. There's some sort of socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity involved with why we don't have the same opportunities presented to us. So, we're going to kick it off with Simona. Go ahead, Simona, and please explain what you would like to discuss when it comes to opportunity gaps. And yeah, go ahead.
All right. Hopefully everybody is doing well tonight. I am basically gonna share a few stories with you all, and then I'm going to cover some laws that have been put in place, and then I'm going to explain to you how these laws are non-beneficial to African Americans, as well as educate people on how to file formal complaints, how to be aware, because sometimes the line is so thin that you almost are not sure if you do have a legal case or not. So we're going to cover that, and we're also going to talk about what to do if you feel that you have been discriminated against. Um, we'll also be taking a look at some of the unfair practices when it comes to home mortgages, appraisals, loans, and everything of that sort, and the effect that they actually have on a community as far as gentrification projects are concerned. So, I'll go ahead and start with a few stories. One of them is a celebrity that we all know. But the first one is basically a situation that happened. This situation happened in Jacksonville, Florida. Basically, a mixed couple, a black woman and a white man married, decided that they wanted to take advantage of the low home refinance rates that were brought on by the coronavirus crisis. So the first step was to, get an appraiser to come out to the house and actually see what's worth. Now, number one, when you want to reappraise your home, it's definitely, definitely recommended that you have more than one opinion. However, in their case, you know, what they had to go through to get the the amount that they wanted is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so first of all, they lived in a neighborhood where the homes are, generally selling for around $450,000. Initially, they were appraised at 330,000. The wife is black. They had pictures in their home of their family, being a mixed couple, and they do live in a traditional, all white, very nice community. We know, you know what I mean. We know what these things look like. After several appraisals, they finally decided, hey, let's take down the pictures of me because she's African American. Let's take down the pictures of our kids. So what ended up happening is someone comes in and values their home for 40% more than the other two appraisals. So basically, it gave their home a value of $465,000 after they had taken down every trace of African American in their home. Um, there was also an incident with everyone knows the comedian D.L. Hughley. Um, he actually ended up filing suit because the same thing happened with him. He was coming in getting appraised at 500,000, and in the end, his home ended up selling for $770,000. So again, because you're African American, we don't want to sell your house for the same price. Uh, from there, we basically want to talk about why these things are happening. Where is the loophole that people are able to get away with this? Um, From there, we can go ahead and talk about the housing discrimination laws that are in place right now. Uh, as you know, discrimination against home renters and buyers by landlords, sellers, and lenders on account of race, color, religion, nationality, whatever else you want to break it down into, was outlawed in the United States by the Fair Housing Act. This was passed in 1968. And in 1974, the federal government decided, let's go ahead and expand this to include everything else, protections of gender, religion, and therefore. And in 1988, they also expanded it to protect families with children and people with disabilities. Now, several states have gone on to change, what they want to add to it. Of course, with the growth of the LB, I'm not even sure of all the letters, the LBGT and queer community, everything has been changed. Um, but yeah, it even breaks down to things like hairstyles, dreadlocks, all different types of things that say, basically, we don't want you to get in this loan, or we don't want to pay you this much for your property. Everything that is unique to the Black culture is pretty much covered, but again, it's still happening. um Back in let's see, August of 2020, August of 2020, the Fair Housing Act decided to increase these protections in different communities. They said that they wanted to provide more guidance to protect the Supreme Court's 2015 ruling in Texas about community affairs and the inclusiveness of all communities. Um, Again, it was overlooked, and then that brought us to Trump, because in 2020 he decided that he would go in and make changes to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which would actually make it even harder to prove that you were actually being discriminated against. In many of those instances, civil rights and housing attorneys were like, it's basically come to the point that the rules, they not only, have to prove that you have been discriminated against, but now you also have to prove that it's significant enough to say, hey, we don't want you in this community. We had to go back and do these things. It basically overlapped and confused the laws that were already in place. Um, and now, how do you keep somebody from being heard in that case? Because we basically just told you, hey, we're changing the law. So now you have an even more difficult time. We're not going to accept all the different types of ways that you have been able to prove this in the past. You have to go harder. It just made it more difficult for people of color to prove that they were actually being discriminated against. Um, and that's why this year, our current president, he signed an executive order to try to reverse this. And at this time, it's actually still ongoing. And the only thing that they've told us is that they will further investigate. And this was right here in February. I mean, they can
Wow.
ignore it all they want, but it's not going to go away. It is still here.
Right.
Uh, did y'all have anything y'all wanted to add before I go into a few more things?
Mm,
Yeah, like you said, the gentrification, you see it everywhere. Some neighborhoods we grew up in, it no longer exists. And this is like we're talking about a 10 to 15-year gap period. Um, you go to this neighborhood, they gentrified it. The rent is more expensive. So that forces you to move out of these communities. So in that situation, we do face inequalities, and housing is definitely a factor.
Right.
it, it
It,
sounded like you could be right next door to somebody as far as like bordering. Like you see how we were right at the edge of Brooklyn, Queens. It's completely two different neighborhoods and it's literally right next door to one another.
right.
Right.
So,
Um,
so why can't they help? the lesser community or help have the same access? Like what's really the big difference?
Basically,
Exactly.
across the country from research, um it's pretty apparent that, African Americans are being denied for mortgages at a higher rate than, their peers. Um, at this time, it's currently stating that we are 3 times more likely to be rejected for home loans than white people. Um, as a result, the gap between Black people in home ownership, we're right now at 34% and white people at 69%. That's a huge gap. You know what I mean? And basically,
Right.
what's happening is in the United States, home ownership, it pretty much makes a difference in terms of your social class, your class mobility, because where rent prices continue to rise, and you can get a loan, or you don't have all of these things to determine what your mortgage rate and percentage is going to be. You know what I mean? Like, we're basically struggling because somebody is saying, hey, you're Black, we're going to make this 10 times harder for you. You know what I mean? Or you're Latin. It
Right.
happens to all people of color, Latin, Asian, Black. It happens to everybody. It's just so happened that our numbers are significantly higher, and we are the ones crammed into these low income housing at a higher rate.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the perception they want to give is also what allows them to try and say, don't allow them to live in that area. Because that's one thing I was coming across
And I'm
too
glad.
in some research. They automatically assume, oh, if you rent out to them, the crime rate's going to increase.
Right.
Something negative is going to increase from that, and the value is going to go down. So let's just not give it to them.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
pretty much what's happening right now is that, especially, okay, let's look at where okay, I just moved out of the city of Atlanta because it was just way too much. In Atlanta, what you have over these last 2 to 3 decades is tens and thousands of public housing. I mean, they just getting rid of them. They're pretty much lying, saying that we're auctioning because um new units are going to be built. We're going to build this area, that area. Even with the Beltway, the Atlanta Beltline was basically something built so that people wouldn't have to drive. But initially, it was built with the intentions of rent not being raised and the city not being how it is as expensive. But again, that was all a lie. It's pretty much they allow this to exist, and then it always ends up being some kind of last resort situation that this is what we had to do. So then they give people these vouchers. They put you on a waiting list for 3 to 5 years. Like, who can wait that long to be in low income housing? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're literally displaced. You have nowhere to go because you can't afford it. In cities like New Orleans, I was reading something in the Washington Post. In cities like New Orleans, 99% of the voucher recipients are Black, and 82% of the landlords refuse to accept these vouchers. So then what? It's illegal. It's illegal, but at the same time, the law has a loophole in it that says that I can deny someone renting my property, or I can deny a loan, or whatever the case, as a bank or a lender, for no apparent reason. Like, anything, I could just make that a reason why I don't want you in here. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is, in these poor communities, is really like a desert. You know what I mean? You got bad transit systems, you have bad health care. It's just under resourced. Public services facilities, they're all lacking resources. Schools, hospitals, libraries, it doesn't matter. And what ends up happening is just
Right.
becomes a dust pool of violence, and it's abusively policed. I mean, it just
Right.
it just doesn't stop. And the real estate industry, they pretty much have always relied on racism as a means to generate profit. You know, the more racism continues to flourish in this market, they're gonna keep making money. Until we remove the profitability from it, it's just gonna continue to be the
Right.
same thing. It's going to continue to be the same thing. But everybody deserves a right to be safe, and we deserve a right to not have our basic civil rights violated.
It
I mean,
sounds like
the time
Agreeable.
is now. Is really now to start figuring some things out.
it
Yeah,
sounds
when
like
Rick
you
Ross
said
and
they
your
keep.
favorite rappers say Bob the Block, take that seriously. If you can invest and connect with other individuals like minded, so that we can have ownership and we can dictate how our future is going to be, not put it in the hands of other people to dictate it for us.
Yeah, because Simona said, what Simona mentioned was they try to keep you in a certain living situation for 30 years plus. That's literally the lifetime of a mortgage that most people sign for. So
Yeah,
basically, while someone's buying a home to live better, they're purposely signing your life away to live at a certain means that someone else is able to do, much better at when you could be presented the same opportunity. So it's kind of like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like you're indenturing yourself. You
yeah.
know what I mean?
It's crazy because, like, on top of that, the rising costs. Like, if you look at the gentrification projects, the rising cost of these rents, people already have lower wages. So, sensibly, the thing would be to get your things together to go ahead and prepare to purchase a home. But how can you do that if somebody's combing through your application, picking out little things that ordinarily wouldn't apply because you're too risky in their eyes? You know what I mean? It's just crazy.
And
It's
I'm
it's
glad you
really
said that.
amazing.
I'm glad you said that, Simona. With the low wages, that goes into with my employment. The employment rates here. Everybody know the agency, the Department of Labor is what who dictates how much and what we get. And in some cities, I research, you'll be surprised. Like one example, I looked up in Georgia from 2010 to 2021. Georgia minimum wage went from $7 to 25 cents to $8.91. New
Ridiculous.
York City, New York City is currently $12.50 minimum wage. Michigan is $9.45. California $14, and it hasn't increased since 2009. They at the House and Senate now arguing. A Republican Party and the Democratic Party are arguing back and forth since 2009. Should they increase these wages to match the cost of living? So I'm glad you stated that. How can we sustain housing or home ownership if we making so little day to day? How can a family of five manage making $9.45 an hour? How can a family of two manage making $12.50 an hour? So these things are ultimate barriers that we face,
Right. And
that
then
we face amongst the African American community.
you
It's
know, I was also reading another one. This was a study that was done at Harvard University. It was just they took a look into what actually is going on in urban communities. So, basically, what they found out was between the years of 2010 and 2018 in poor urban neighborhoods, the rent rose 50% faster than in rich neighborhoods. Um, they basically concluded that they basically concluded that these escalated rents, um, they help to constitute markets, um, that will be otherwise condemned as uninhabitable. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of help create a community in a situation where it would say this is an area that needs gentrification. But in actuality, I mean, it's only unfit for human habitation because y'all don't want to put in the proper, you don't want to put in the proper policing. You don't want to put in the proper resources. You don't want to put in the proper mental resources to get this community to stimulate. You just want to go in, have a landlord come in illegally doing all kind of crap, collecting tens and thousands of rent for a dump, essentially for a dump, But literally after everything is said and done, that's what you have left, you know.
Yep.
And who are they?
Yeah.
There's researchers also out of the same university. They had went in also to do a study. They basically um discussed before, like the House Financial Services Subcommittee, and they went in and were basically telling them that their report concluded that a home in a majority, black neighborhood is likely to be valued at 23% less than the same type of home in a white community. They basically were saying that this is starting to cost black people who do not live in these communities. It's costing them billions of dollars. You know what I mean? $156 billion is what they concluded in 2019. That if you're black and you don't want to live in these neighborhoods, now we put you over here. Your home is valued less. Your property value is still going up. So basically, they still ripping you off when you want to go somewhere. And it's crazy because you hear so many people
Yep.
have that attitude where they think they made it. You know what I mean? And this type of stuff is not happening to them. But in actuality, if you look at the facts in these studies, it is happening to you. You got more money, but you're spending more money to get in that community rather than be where could be somewhere else, and
Yeah, and then you
pretty
spending
much
this
not
money
be
and you still
discriminated against to be paying more than the
exactly.
people who are already living here. You buying your house
Exactly.
for 20 to 40% more, you financing at a bigger rate than them. You living in the same community, but clearly we don't want you here. So
Exactly.
if you want to come over here, you're gonna pay. Otherwise, they pretty much saying get back in your place because ain't nothing you can do. But it is. But a lot of people don't.
Nope. Nope. And you we as African Americans has systematically suffered higher worse conditions than any other human race, and we can go back to the hands of time from slavery. And it, like Simona said, they keep trying to put a band-aid or two, but it's not enough. You can't keep turning a blind eye to these situations that needed to be attended to. And that's why we're talking tonight. We're talking opportunity gaps, how we are suffering by the landslide day to day, inequalities, limited resources, unable to acquire home mortgage loans because we don't make enough. We don't make enough because the minimum wage hasn't increased since 2009. What is taking so long to make a decision that so many people rely on? Income is the way we survive. Income is how we are able to produce and continue to keep the economy flourishing. So it's not a bad idea to increase minimum wage, because why? It continues to help the economy flourish. And yeah, Simona, I agree with everything you said in terms of housing. and how they oppress us and how they continue to oppress us. If you don't make this amount of money, hey, you have to live here. Then you live here, it's worse conditions. I remember, I can't remember the what year this was, but it was a young woman. She was a single parent, I believe, living in Philadelphia, and she had made a conscious decision to use a family member's address in order to get her daughter into a public sector school that was more
Oh,
decent than where she was currently living. And what did they do? They fined her and put her in jail up to 2 years. So not
yeah,
only did they deprive her daughter of an education, they also deprived the young lady of a parent. Why should she have been accused and locked up as if she did a major crime? She just made a conscious decision to give her daughter a fair opportunity in education.
yeah. Um, there, there was I don't know. I'm just thinking about what you just said because we had some cases like that out here, uh, both black and white, and the same thing that you were saying, they were handled totally different. I I can't really reference them because I can't remember, but I will look into it and research it. That on another episode on something relative, we can go back to it because at the end of the day, there should be plenty more of episodes of Triple T Sisters, and we'll be
Right,
able to go back and refresh that for anybody that does
right,
want to know. Um,
right,
I wanted to talk about some of the things that are also going on in mortgage lending, and also talk about the discrimination stunts as it pertains to wealth building for us. Um, in January of last year, 2020, a study of racial and ethnic discrimination in housing was they took a second look into that from the years of 1976 to 2016. And what they basically found was that the racial gaps in loan denial, they kind of declined, but the racial gaps in mortgage costs didn't decline, suggesting again that this is persistent with racial discrimination. It's like, okay, so now it's like y'all are giving us over time. What happened is they stopped declining, but they started giving us more. In a sense, they started giving us fucked up loans, basically, to come back and later repossess this house because they know you couldn't afford to be in there anyway. So they let some of us slide through the
right,
cracks so we can hush this situation for a while. You know what I mean?
right,
Um, it was things like making loans on less favorable terms. You know what I mean? Like doing things and sliding things in, but again, in the end, they still found the same thing. Black and Latins paid nearly 10% more on interest and finance fees compared to white people. So again, they short sighting us there again. Um, there are
right,
laws in place. There's anti-discrimination laws in mortgage and lending. You know, there all of these laws are included in the Fair Housing Act. This was passed in 1974, but here we are in 2021, still debating this issue. You know,
right,
um,
right,
and it's crazy because having this discrimination housing, it deprives more from us than a place to live. This is actually affecting our ability to build wealth in successful lineages. It's devastating to Black Americans. You know what I mean? Because we can't transmit
right,
generational wealth and pass down something if we can't get the loans. It's not only housing. This is affecting us in business loans. You know what I mean? It's
right,
affecting us in every area of building. It's really ridiculous. Um, they did an analysis. The Urban Institute in Washington D.C. They basically found that the average housing wealth at the age of 60 to 61 for those who had purchased a home at age 45 or older was $26,668 for blacks. And for white people, six figures. 104,866 was the minimum. Like why? Why is the gap?
Wow.
Why is the gap $80,000? Why? The average white person
Right.
$80,000 at this age, and we got 26. Why? This wealth gap is basically attributed to the fact that a smaller percentage of blacks are able to buy a first-time home before the age of 35. And then, you know, our first homes are usually of lower value. We have more debt when we actually go into purchasing this home because they have allowed us to slip through the cracks in ways that they can come back and get this. You know what I mean? And what ends up happening
Right.
is that more black people, they cannot maintain home ownership beyond that first home. So what ends up happening is now you went from being a homeowner back to renting when you about 60. Why? Why? Because you had a jacked up loan that you couldn't see through when you were unable to work anymore. The loan
Right.
didn't change with the situation how it does. The contingencies in our loans are different. They're different. It's contingent upon a lot of stuff, and it's just crazy.
Right. Like you said, it's set up. It's up for failure.
Yeah. Um, it just leads you to ask, what can a prospective home buyer or renter do if they believe that they're being discriminated against? Um, Under the anti-discrimination and harassment loans, owners of private properties, they can basically tell you for any reason as long as it's not discriminatory. So basically, as long as I don't blatantly tell you you're not moving in here because you're black, or I'm denying your loan because you're black, I can get away with it. So,
Right.
as African Americans, we have to adjust as well. Um, we have to take a look at things. So basically, when someone is saying things to you, in real estate, like, oh, this is a really good fit for you, or adverse, they're saying, I don't feel you would be at home in this neighborhood. I don't think this would be a good fit for you. You know what? I think you might be happier in another neighborhood. This person is basically trying to tell you that this is not for you. And it's probably due to race or religion. That could probably be the reason. Other things, we need to be aware of this. We need to document it. Um, Other things is like, you may have sudden roadblocks. You know what I mean? You may be,
Yep.
after you have pre-qualified for a home or an apartment, then they come back and say you're denied this property, but yet the property is still on the market. You know what I mean? But you denied me, a perfectly qualified person, but this is still on the market. As a homeowner, you basically can perform your own research. Um, you can also find out whether or not at the time you are able to request information to know whether or not the broker failed to show you all the properties that they had on the market at the time. Um, you could check with the bank. You know what I mean? You could check to see what these rates are, what was going on. You are able to find out this information. You may also, when buying a home, you may be being discriminated against in your credit information. Um, uh, Certain situations, like they say, you have been denied a home loan because of negative or insufficient information. Um, how do you pre-qualify for a home, but you have insufficient information obtained on your consumer report? Like, you shouldn't even been able to pre-qualify. So how does that? Can someone make that make sense? Like that? That just shouldn't be a thing. If that was told to me, I would probably be sitting in front of a lawyer. You know what I mean? And explaining this. Um, I do know, like in federal and state fair credit laws, it requires that an applicant be informed of the reasons that they were rejected or charged a higher rent. Um, All you need to do is provide the name and the address of the agency and the negative information that you were told. Um, Again, you do have a right to obtain a free copy of your credit report within 60 days, and then you could dispute anything that they may be saying. If you find that it's a fault, you can dispute it. Um, in a case of like, with your mortgage discrimination, you do have the right to see any negative information. And again, same thing, dispute it there, you know. And then at the if you still feel like there was no outcome, you can report this. You know what I mean? You can report it because this is a violation of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. If they are not giving you this information, they are violating your right. You know, you
Right. I
are
agree.
you're also able to get state and local assistance. If all else fails, you need to contact your state or local fair housing commission. You know what I mean? Like, you can find a local fair housing center by simply putting it in Google. You know, you can try to contact the National Fair Housing Alliance in Washington, D.C. They can, they also, if they're getting too many complaints in certain areas, they basically send out testers, like what you would call a secret shopper in other fields. You know what I mean? Send out secret
Right.
shopper, and they'll see for themselves what's going on. Um,
Yeah, we gotta start holding people accountable.
yeah, start holding people accountable. Like, keep going and going and going. But see, the thing is, a lot of people don't. They're not mad enough. People are not outraged enough that this is still happening.
Right. That's the
It's
problem.
happening everywhere. It's even happening in the colleges. They have they have something going on where they're even checking it for the elite colleges. I know people been seeing a lot of the celebrities that are getting their children into school just because they have money, but they're putting these colleges under fire and trying to get these scandals out around the admission practices.
Oh yeah, that's been a thing. Cause they only
Yeah,
have a certain amount of spots. They'll put out somebody who is a basically straight A student to bring in somebody with a C average because their parents got money. C average, no talent, but you in this school. Meanwhile, my
Yep.
child may have a straight A track record, talented,
Yep.
physically capable of playing any sport you could think of, but yet they were overlooked and didn't get those scholarships because they didn't have the funds. And because y'all already
Or
had
the
this
social
person in,
status.
yeah, the social status, they are already in place. They don't give a damn about what kind of scholarship I got. This money coming now, and we putting you up in here right now. And that's that.
Yep.
if you check out it's called the 74million.org. They have it's 74 million children in America under 18 years old. So that's what the statistics are about. And yeah, they get into how they're publicizing the lawsuits against Harvard, UCLA, USC, and some of these things are getting into the Supreme Court. They have about 43% of white students accepted at Harvard. They either got through because their parents are donors or legacies or some sort of athletic affiliation. And they say like 75% of them, if they were like 75% of them would have been rejected if they were held to the normal standards. So basically, three quarters of the entire, white people that get accepted into these colleges, you mean to tell me if they were held to a normal standard, you lose 75% of your academic class? So you know off
Right.
the bat that it's purely about money. It's
Oh yeah.
purely about race. It's purely about money. And as long as you're wealthy and have some sort of affiliation when it comes to those areas, then basically you're in. And everything's altered from that point. Because then you're not even giving the opportunities to the people that actually are qualified for them.
Right.
And that's
Right.
just
Automatically
plain and
put you in a
simple.
box.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I did have one more thing to add. On top of, addressing this with your state, you also have the right to file a federal complaint. Um, you fill out and file an administrative complaint with HUD's Fair Housing Equal Opportunity. Um, the Equal Opportunity Office, by law, they are required to investigate within 100 days of filing. It has been extended due to COVID-19. Like, they will send something and let you know, blah 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 blah. But they also have a hotline, and that is available on Google. But if anybody is listening right now, you want to get in there, 1-800-669-9777. You can also print out the form and mail it in. They have English, Spanish, several different, languages. But I would prefer not to mail it, because I would prefer not to mail it unless you require a signature. So
And what
can't
is that
nobody
number
say
in
it didn't
reference
show
to
up.
again? What is that phone number in reference to again?
Um, if you feel like you have been discriminated, it's the Housing Discrimination Hotline. It's a federal number,
Okay.
1-800-669-9777. But also on HUD's Fair Housing Equal Opportunity Office website, there's a form that you can print and mail, which is probably the best way, because right now, COVID-19, ain't nobody answering the phones, you know? But they have several languages available. English and Spanish, of course, are available. Um, they also enforce anti-discrimination laws with respect to mortgage lending and appraisals as well. Um, Sometimes the U.S. Department of Justice will also file lawsuits against people or companies, especially if there's been like violence or violation of criminal law. Then the U.S. Department of Justice gets involved. Um, but housing and civil rights attorneys say that filing a complaint with HUD, especially on different grounds, people, who live in cities with, strong fair housing laws, they'll pretty much be better off, going into the state courts. But if you live somewhere where it's not, you need to go federal. If your state, your county, your city, whatever, doesn't have strong laws in place, just go federal. Leave the state out of it. I would probably still file the complaint so that they can't come back in later and say you didn't follow whatever type of BS protocol. I would still go federal and still go state, just so it's on the records. I'm not stopping. This is an issue and I want it taken care of, you know? Um,
Absolutely. Is there any time frame from the time you felt like the discrimination occurred versus when you're allowed to file a complaint?
for us, no, but they have 100 days to answer you after your filing is after your case is accepted or they have processed your case. They have 100 days to respond. So,
Thank you, and you can find a number on the screen to the Housing Discrimination Hotline.
right.
That was some good information
Mm-hmm.
because.
You could
Mhm. Go ahead, Simone.
you can also file complaints against violations of the Federal Equal Credit Opportunity Act. If you feel like there was some discrepancies um in the transferring of your credit information, like things that have been that you have documentation that have been taken care of, but somehow they are still getting this information, but they should not be able to access that. But yeah, you can do that at the state and
I think we give her a second. Simone.
I'm here. I had one of the littles woke up screaming, having a nightmare.
Oh, I think they connecting because that's what she
Uh-huh.
told me. She said somebody's coming for me. I'm like, no, stop. It's okay.
But yeah, so
But
yeah,
what's
so
crazy
that's
is that these laws are in place in order to prevent discrimination, and you can make these complaints, right? But at the end of the day, they're outright happening. So now my thing is you put laws in place to prevent people from unfairly treating others from having
right.
access to these things, and then you openly watch them practice what you're telling them they should not be practicing in order to be fair, and then people who are being treated unfairly then have to take more time out to point out what's blatantly in front of everyone's face.
Oh, there's also some things that they could take look at. If you want to, get your investigation starter kit, you can pretty much learn the fundamental analysis strategies used by like investors and all these companies. Um, it's an online course by Investopedia Academy. Um, it's got like over like about 70 lessons and exercises and things like that for you to learn and how to create long-term wealth, um, navigate exchange traded funds, stocks, and other things. So they do have a free trailer available as well, and that's the Investopedia Academy. But at the end of everything, in closing, I just want to tell people when it comes to suspected, discrimination in purchasing a home, you have to be patient. Fighting back requires your absolute patience. Um, you need to be patient so you can think clearly. It's no room for getting upset, yelling, screaming, disrespecting people. It's a very tedious process. You can't get out of character and give these people something to hold against you. And I think that's part of where we kind of fell off. Like so many people are walking around here with that I'ma tell you off attitude. But when you dealing with this type of stuff, you gotta beat these people at their own game. You gotta be quiet, you gotta be patient, you gotta gather your information, you gotta get your documentation, and you really do need some good legal advice. You need to ask questions, you need to investigate on your own, you need to investigate every party that comes into place. You know what I mean? Like that's really just the best advice to seek information, find out all you can, be patient, and just get it done. It's gonna take some time, but at the end of the day, it's worth it. One step closer to someone else not having to deal with the same thing, you know?
Yeah, and it'll help you hopefully not have to deal with it in the future.
Right. It definitely will help, more people being upset about this, more people doing something about this. It can help generations to come because at the end of the day, we're not going to be here forever, but we leave our children, some of us going to leave grandchildren, great grandchildren. Make life easier for them. The time is now.
Right,
Like, stop fighting against the system. Be smarter than the system. It's just the time is now.
right.
Because one thing is for sure, they're going to continue to come with attacks. We just have to stay up on our legal information and stay up on these laws, and they cannot stop us. But it's too many. I hate to say it, it's too many, especially in the poor communities. It's too many people walking around becoming a victim, and it's like we can't do it.
And you don't
The
have
time
to.
that the time for this victim shit is over with. It's over.
Yeah, you don't have to be a victim no more. That's why our ancestors were victimized to make a better way for us. Like Simona said, every generation is supposed to get better with time. And like we said, this is the time. Even in the workplace, we're discriminated sometimes on the basis of our color. Sometimes we don't even get in the front door because of our name. um, once we do get in the front door, we also face other obstacles. One time you can get a degree, a bachelor's degree, and was stated that you were obligated to get in a fair employment with fair wages. But today we have um a large significant amount of college educated students that come going into jobs that they would never think that they would have with the degree. Burger King, McDonald's, things of that nature. So now they have this 100,000 degree, but they can obtain adequate salary to pay this debt. So like Simona say, we come in debt, and misfortunately we leave in debt. African Americans, I've read a report. It said the new report looking at the inequalities that black workers face in the private sector, it would take almost 95 years to close. Why 95 years? Why 95 years? It would take for us to be able to obtain the same wealth that other groups have obtained.
That's
I
crazy.
also read a report that said that they identified 10 areas for companies and other stakeholders to address to increase opportunities for employment racial parity. Some areas for improvement included reducing high unemployment for black workers as compared to others, underrepresentation of black workers in fast growing industries, and higher wage jobs and limited manageable sponsorship and support for black employees. The report also suggested five no regrets move, such as strategically trying to prioritize intervention to close these racial inequalities in the workplace. We also need to close inequalities in the healthcare, retail, and other large five fortune companies because we are underrepresented. Some job markets you see, there's none of us there. Why? Some of us are very talented. Some of us have high degrees in many fields. Why is these gaps so large? Like Simona said, in the housing, why are these gaps so large in every field of our life? It shows you that we haven't came that far. We've overcome, but we haven't overcome that far. The U.S. labor market has now seen a record 109 months of uninterrupted job growth, with the overall unemployment rate falling to its lowest level in 50 years. However, African American workers still face.
Oh, what happened? I don't know what happened.
No,
Think,
no, no. She's uh
give her a second. She should be coming back. She probably had to charge something. Let me see if I could. I don't see her. Give me 1 second. I don't see her coming back. But no, it doesn't make sense what any of what she was saying. Did you hear how long she said it would take? 95 years?
yeah, that's insanity.
That's insanity. Wow. And what's crazy is, you see, when I was checking on everything within the education system, everything is based on, it's on a tax basis. So basically, every time people keep questioning the different areas of income based on where we live, that plays a large factor because the higher the tax basis in the community, the more funding you're going to receive, the more access you're going to have to like museums, libraries, all these things that are normally not found in your lower income neighborhoods. And for everybody who wants to know, a tax base is basically when you look at everyone's assets and property. So essentially, if like Simone was speaking about on property, if you're destined to not even have or be able to have access to a home of a certain value, which is probably in most cases your largest asset, then how are people within a certain race or ethnicity supposed to attain the right to even live within a community that has access to all these things to begin with?
I mean, but that's kind of the goal. If you want to obtain economic and social isolation, that's really the perfect way to do it.
I mean, you're being set up, so to speak,
Yeah.
because they
But
all
for
tie in
them,
together.
right, but for them, that achieves that goal. Like, I believe that's what that goal is. They want us to be, isolated and shut out from what's really going on out here. That's what we're put here for, to build and create successful lineages. So, you know,
When I said y'all should go to the 74million.org, um, because they even pointed out that school funding, just from how you say we're broken down into borders. So just from border to border, the amount per child was about a $4,200 difference. So now you're telling me just because I live across the street, my funding just decreased $4,200 because I live across the street.
that's crazy. I wanted you to repeat that number to make sure I heard you right. That's crazy.
$4,200. So now because that border cut off right there, and I live across the street, and I'm just a neighboring kid. When you go to a school based on your district, and then you can't go to your school, the school you may want to go to because it's not in your district, you may live a block too far. So now you're telling me the difference between me and another kid who's within that district, who's probably a block away, the difference in the funding is about $4,200.
That's like Cooper Park. Why was I going to 110 and y'all went to 132?
Yeah, that's exactly what that's like. And they're not very far from one another.
That's crazy. But then also look at how many times they redraw the district lines. Those change too.
Well, remember, as the rates of the types of people, according to them, that are moving within the community, that means that those district lines are going to shift because they're watching to see,
Absolutely.
how many Asians are moving in, how many Black people are moving in, how many Hispanics are moving in. It's like, oh no, we got to change that line.
Mm-hmm.
And then that line is also going to change what the houses you're allowed to purchase or the rates you're going to get those houses at or the amount of the house to begin with. Now the asset is not even going to be the same amount. So now if we all have homes that we're able to acquire and we've made the proper money to acquire these homes, you're telling me our tax basis, go back to the tax basis, is never going to equate what another racial tax basis is because you haven't even allowed us to obtain the same type of housing. Even when we have money, we can't even obtain the same type of loans. We can't obtain the same type of areas to live in. So now you're telling me I'm never going to be able to live in that type of community that has that school or that has that museum, or I'm always going to have this type of school. I'm always going to have this type of setting.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Lost her again. I don't know what's happening. I think she's trying to set up. I'll see if she pops back.
Okay.
There she goes.
I mean, that's really another thing what it all boils down to. Like when we're talking about the housing market, when we're talking about education, when we're talking about, employment, It's the profitability. It's the money they make off of this stuff. Just like
Oh,
they make this money off these government programs and food stamps and all of this other stuff. They are profiting.
they also said that 45% of black kids, black students, they don't go beyond high school. But let me paint a picture. So if you grow up in a particular environment and you've been taught that you need to get through school and you've been taught that, finishing high school, that's what you need to do. It's going to make you successful. But you haven't been given the necessary tools to find college or to get into college or to even find a way to find a higher education, so to speak. It doesn't have to just be college. But if you haven't been given the tools to find higher education, or you may need to what? Because most low income people need to start working. So now they're trying to work and go to school, or they're trying to just work and provide to help their family. So now you're telling me 45% of these people don't go beyond high school. And the majority of the time, it's probably due to the type of living they're in or the lack of information that, has been provided. Because I remember when we went to high school, no, not for nothing. We went to college, I know, but to get the information to go to college wasn't as readily available as I know it was for other kids who went to college.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yes, you have to, because people always say you have to want to do it. That's true. But to be honest, when you're like 15, 16, 17, honestly
Right.
speaking, you need that step, and people are put in place to be that step. So why even have these people if they're not helping these young people take that next step? And these young people have to like find a staircase in the dark, so to speak.
Right. And it's funny you say that because I literally watched, like like I told you, when I came down south, my neighborhood that we lived in, it was well to do. You know what I mean? But by the time I went back to New York, came back down south, it just completely changed. Like the county had it became bigger. There was one part of the county that used to be considered the city of Atlanta, but then they put it on with Clayton, and they gave people these vouchers to come there, and it was like a pollution in the schools. Next thing you know, when I was in ninth grade, they got people coming in a ninth grade class addressing us about college, explaining to us the importance of a GPA, explaining to us the importance of putting these things together so that you will be, you know, attractive in terms of, a college rep. But by the time I got in 11th and 12th grade in the same school, now 95% black, y'all don't have no resources available. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even have a cheerleading team no more, damn near. And it was just crazy to see that happening and to now look back at it and understand. But at 17, 18, not have a clue. And, they already know majority of the parents are not active. So they already know they can do this type of stuff.
And I read a report, it said addressing racial inequalities is also good for the economy. It said a research from Policy Link estimated that removing racial disparities would boost the US economy by 2.3 trillion, improving employment opportunities and wages, would improve outcomes for workers, their families, and the economy, according to the report in Race and the Work of the Future. Nearly 60% of black workers in the South away from new sites of investment and industry opportunity, and black workers are overrepresented in lower wage positions within service oriented industry. More than 70% of black workers in retail and over 80% of those in accommodation and food service earning less than 30%. Let me tell you something, 70% black workers in retail, that was me. That was my story. I was in retail, busting my behind, working for Macy's. I'm telling you, I'm opening. I'm opening 6:30 in the morning, 7 in the morning. I'm making $9.50. I'm at Times Square, the biggest Macy's 5 fortune company. I'm working the hustle and bustle, and I'm seeing at least 200 to 400 customers in the work shift. I'm unsibling merchandise truckloads and 950. That's my check. And benefits, benefits undermine whether you
You
full
got
time
benefits?
or part. You is limited. Is limited. You full time, you getting part time benefits.
Oh, I asked if you got benefits because I did retail for a while, and then
Yeah,
every
some
summer during
places you don't
college.
get, but everybody black. I want to let you know, 70% of black workers are in retail, and over 80% of those in accommodation and food servicing. We not everybody black. That's not our thing. We not all called to just do retail and do food service, and then we're not all called to be earning less than $30,000 a year. What is $30,000 a year in the year of 2020? Just like what is $9.45 in Michigan? What is $12.50 in New York City? What is $14 an hour in California? And what is $8.91 in Georgia? What is $8.65 in Florida? Why is that today in 2021? What type of wages? How are we living with these wages? Why is this a Why is this a discussion to go back and forth whether you give the American people an extra dollar so they can get an extra slab of bacon? Why is this a confrontational matter? Because it's a setup. It's set up. It was designed this way, so they
Can
don't
I
have
add
a
something?
counter. Yes, go ahead.
You know, again, as this ties in with you, when you look at housing and this gentrification, what's happening is these people are working these, low income jobs. They have to move further out of the city because they can't afford to live there. What happened? Like this the money that they make is pretty much money for gas and groceries. Now, how you gonna pay the rent after that?
That's
Because
what
the
and
government
this is
say
what
you
we
make
have.
too much for public assistance.
Yeah, or food stamps.
Right. But your job is
That's where it
this low job,
goes.
it does not cover rent, bills, food, gas, utilities. It just don't take care of it.
That's why us
That's
as American citizens, we need to contact. We need to start implementing and creating petitions. That's our right and that's our liberty. We all can agree, us three women coming from inner cities of Brooklyn and staying in low income housing, we can all agree to say that we were in our conditions because of what was the cause that they were given. It's not that our family wasn't working, you know. It's not like our family was sitting relying on the government, but like you said, what can I do with $30,000 a year? And it's not like some of these people don't have degrees. Most of these people have degrees and are making less than 30,000 a year. And then when you go look at Europe and Germany and these other countries surrounding us, they giving they citizens $18, $21. During COVID, they was giving families anywhere between 2,000 to 2,800. They were giving us 1,400. What is the dilemma? What is the going back and forth? We need to start creating petitions. We need to go to our neighbors, start having these conversations. Hey, how you doing? What is your qualifications? What is your status? What have you have any credentials? Oh yeah, I graduated from here. I've been working here. How much you been getting paid? When the last time you got a raise? We need to start having these conversations as American citizens here. That's our right and our liberty. The Department of Labor, that's the agency. Those are the people that enforces on how much we make according to where we live, according to different laws that were passed. But since 2009, no one has received an increase. This is 2021 now. What is the dilemma? What is the confusion? What is the going back and forth? Bills do not wait. Time waits for no man. 11 years, things have significantly changed. Technology, now we can see things from just a touch from our phone. What is the dilemma? We need to start holding people accountable, like Simona said. Start calling, start voting, start following up, start having conversations with your next door neighbor. This is our rights. This is our liberty. We work hard every day, not just because we want to. It's because we're trying to do better for ourselves, do better for the next generation. I've concluded what I had to say. Right? Call the Department of Labor if you feel like you're being discriminated as well. I have been discriminated multiple times just because of my color, just because of the job status I have, not knowing that I have a degree. I was a business owner, still working a 9 to 5. They didn't know none of that. They label you just on the basis of your color. And once you start talking and you start holding people accountable and you know your rights, you can start moving in a progressively manner. We don't have to act ignorant and crazy and belligerent. Uh, Go professionally, leave the situation, write things down like Simona said, jot things down, document it, and move forward. Move forward. But the time is now. We can't wait no longer. The time is now.
That was a good way to sum it up.
Hmm. When it comes to moving forward, we need to also be educating our children on these issues as well, because I know we had a conversation one day this week, and we was talking about things that weren't passed down generational, I was talking to Cassandra one day this week about personal things being passed down in the family generation, about how to become a young lady or how to become a young man, along with modeling these things. The conversations are necessary as well, and that pertains to this subject as well. Like, if parents are dealing with different things, it's time to sit down with their children and put them in these conversations and let them know what's happening, because they learn through this
Right.
experience. That's what they learning from.
Yeah, don't wait too late. Don't let them have to figure it out. That's our duty and our responsibility to do the figuring out for them, so that they transition will be a little smoother than what we had. That's the goal.
Right, right. That's right. That's right.
Should we get into the quote for today from D.L. Hughley?
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Simona. That went so well with what we was talking about for today.
I heard his voice when I read it.
Yes. Yes. Yes, he's definitely a advocate for the culture. He's
Yeah.
definitely an advocate.
He called them out. Y'all make sure y'all read the book. It's called
Oh yeah,
Surrender
I'm
White
ordered.
People. Surrender White People by D.L. Hughley.
he
I'm
said
definitely getting that.
he said People always tell us to pull
Surrender.
ourselves People always tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But what if you remove the straps, he said? You're invested in the American dream. You have capital, you have a chip in the game. And the fact that somebody could summarily minimize my wealth just because of a bias, it seemed crazy to me. That's literally all we've been discussing. How how we're literally minimalized and marginalized simply because of our rationality, not rationality, nationality, our race, our ethnicity. That's a bias. For some reason, I mean, Simone has been saying it all night. For some reason, all these injustices, even just to buy a home, just to be within a certain community, a certain area, it's fucked up. That's plain and simple.
Getting arrested for putting your daughter or your son in a better school because the community that you live in is poverty stricken, is gun violence, and you want to go maybe 10 blocks up where there's peace, integrity, the community
Right, walking
have better
distance.
better facilities, and you get arrested.
Oh yeah, you
And you
went
get
off a
arrested.
second. You went off a second because I was telling Simona that was a thing I found on the website too on the 74 million org. $4,200 difference just from if you live on that side of the district border versus another side of a district border. The average was $4,200 difference per student that they're investing in.
That's
So
crazy.
basically, that's crazy. That's what she said.
Yeah,
But
that's why I
that's what you
brought it
just
up.
said. You want to send your kid to a better school. Why do I have to send my kid to this poverty-stricken, gun-slinging school just because I happen to live 4 blocks away, from a particular address?
Yeah, because that's all I can afford. It has nothing to do with your qualifications. It has nothing to do with your IQ level. Many people are smart. Living in the projects, I've met a lot of talented people. We talented, all three of us. We can tell you because we first center. We've been there. All talented. People can draw. People can write. People can moderate, people can draw, create. As many talents coming in these impoverished communities, but they just don't have the fair playing ground. There's no fair playing ground.
No, and it's not even trying to be created as such. It's trying to be kept as an unfair playing ground.
Right.
Y'all know what's crazy? Like, when a black person, becomes like somebody successful and like made it, especially in politics when we see it on TV, like the way they embrace each other, like it's just so like it's crazy to look at that because it's literally like, man, that's just one more that made it. You know what I mean? Because like people really just don't understand, and I hate it when people try to relate to people of color. Like, no, you don't understand. No, you do not know, because if you knew, you would
Mm,
be out here advocating against this as well. We wouldn't be out here fighting for this. Y'all would be out here in masses, just like we are. You know, it's just crazy.
will never understand. Will never understand what it feels like driving while black. Will never understand what it feels like going into a store and being followed while black. Will
Right.
never
Will never.
understand
will
And it
never be
goes
able
on.
to understand not wanting to let my teenager experience getting his license early because he's 15 and 6'4" tall and dark skinned. You know, never understand.
Right. Right.
Even with his schooling, understanding as a parent having to do more because the school ain't gonna do enough.
Right. Right.
Having
Never
to go up
know the
to a
people.
job and stuff because somebody done got out of line and try to cheat your child. Like, yeah, man, it's crazy. It's
No, give her a moment. It says she's still there, but it must be something that clicked. Unlike you, when it happened to you, you disappeared. She didn't disappear. So just give her a
Right.
second. But yeah, you can't understand what you've never been had to be a circumstance of. Not truly, anyway. And it's unfortunate because I was telling her earlier, it's like you're fighting for things that are blatantly written as things that should not be done. It's not allowed. It's wrong. It's discrimination. You're literally fighting for the things that you're undisputably seeing occur. We all see it's like watching someone do something and commit a crime. We all see it. We all know it's a crime. But then we still all gotta watch this guy go through something or this woman, and it's like, but we just seen it happen. We just seen it go down.
It,
We just seen who it was.
exactly.
And then why are we doing this?
Exactly.
If you can hear us, Simona, I can't see you. I see you backstage, so I'm gonna kick you out and then you come back. Oh no, you're back. Now you're back. Give me a second. I see you.
Okay.
everything the whole
There
time.
you go. No, now you're back. I mean, now you're on. Sorry.
Okay. I was able to hear everything.
It said the device wasn't
Okay.
connected.
Oh, yeah, it did tell me that as well.
But say what you were
Yeah.
saying because we didn't hear nothing. We didn't hear anything. Simona?
I was just explaining how, I was just explaining how people don't know, they just don't know what it's like for people of color. They don't know what it's like for people of color that don't have an accent. I can't come to this country and get a pizza for a gas station.
You okay?
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. I just was like, wow, it's just crazy. Just thinking about it and becoming emotional because I'm just tired of it.
right.
Yeah.
Right. That's all right. I had a moment when I seen it was like I want to say the end of November, early December, when I seen a lawyer get tased in the courtroom, and this happened in California. I had a moment to myself, so it's okay to let it out because this is traumatic. This is traumatizing. Every day, like you said, people don't even know. People that lived in empowered communities, we see people get shot. We see prostitution every day. We see people getting just harm day to day, arguing, cussing out. You can go down the street, hear somebody get cussed out like a dog. That's traumatizing, and it's still going on for generations. It's still going on. People having to be placed, like Simona said, and the Marilees being able to, people having to be placed, not even because of their qualifications, just the bias of their color and who we are, black. Just because simply that.
I
And
think
that's why
this,
yeah, we have this platform to be able to have progressive dialogue so we can for years decades people will be able to tune into this and have some type of way, some type of a way of thinking, a new mindset, unification, togetherness, loving thy sister, thy brother, helping each other out, sharing information, supporting one another. It's time to stop all of that hating, hatred for one another. We've been already the worst. The worst has happened to us. Why we
Yeah,
want to continue to do that amongst
yeah.
each other?
That brings us to the topic of next week, just touching on that. The village doesn't necessarily have to be blood. That's not the way it was back in the day.
Right,
You know, the village could have been the next door neighbor, the family that your family grew up in, the family before your family grew up with their third generation. It could just be any. You know what I
right,
mean? It just was unconditional love for who we are as a people.
right.
No
I
walking
agree.
around having an attitude with each other, afraid to speak to your sister, afraid to speak to your brother and say, "Hey, how you doing today?" Got your lips all curled up. Like, what happened? What happened? Like, it's just crazy. I mean,
That's
we
yeah.
just
What's
gotta be
going
real.
on?
We doing some things amongst ourselves, and I mean, the shit just ain't right. It's time to cut it out because it's some bullshit, and we look stupid doing it.
Right.
hmm that is true.
We all grown. I've had my moments. You know what I mean? It is what it is. We just gotta look at things and start trying to get better and get on a better mental level, because they not playing with us. They getting slicker and slicker. But we gotta get smarter and smarter. That's the only way to win. Yeah.
That was a good way to get to the closeout.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, we really gonna start evaluating these villages. It's time. It's time to build that village, get it back strong, warriors, conquerors. It's time.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so that's our stream for today.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
We spoke on
That's
opportunity gaps. And yeah, like I'm gonna restate it again for those who didn't hear it. The quote from D.L. Hughley was today's inspiration. People always tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, but what if you remove the straps, he said. You're invested in the American dream, you have capital, you have a chip in the game. The fact that somebody could summarily minimize my wealth just because of my bias, it seems crazy to me. So that's literally every single lack of opportunity due to race, ethnicity, location, just all of it.
yeah,
Oh, thank you,
yeah.
Sam. Oh, we have a comment tonight. Excellent discussion as always. Keep it up. Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
You're 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 not even understanding. Do you even remember Sammy from Cooper? Puerto Rican Sammy. That's who's
Oh
listening.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Amazing. Long
you're
time.
on. You're commenting.
All
Thank you.
right now.
Shout
Who's in
out
the
to Sam.
building?
You made our night. We got a comment. Yay!
Yes.
I know, right? Thank you.
It's a slower night.
Yeah, but it might, but the impact is greater than ever.
And
Each
it's
one
real.
teach one.
And
Each
it's
one
real.
teach one. Every Sunday we making progress. We having great conversations that need to be taking place for so long. We can identify with these issues, but we're not talking about it and we're not connecting. That's the difference. Now that we're talking about it and we connecting, we're able to formulate an agency that can be a relatable in making these changes that need to take place.
That's right.
And that's the difference.
Yes, thank you. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you ladies for having good information as
Yes,
always.
thank you, sisters.
See, Simona, I'm with you, girl. I'm doing the same thing. I peeped it.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.